Welcome to Cabinet Conversations. I'm Jose Carrasquillo. I'm the Director of Artistic Programming at Ford Theater. If you are joining us for the first time, this is our live series exploring creativity, history, and leadership. You can learn more and explore our past programs by visiting our website at www.fords.org. Last week, Ford's reopened for visitors to come and visit the historic site. Ford's has only been open for 5 weeks in the last 14 months, and our stage has been dark for the entire pandemic shutdown. Even so, the show must and does go on, and we are extremely hopeful to be able to bring audiences back to the theater soon. We hope to have an announcement about the return of performances later this summer. Please stay tuned. Meanwhile, we want to talk a little about the behind-the-scenes process that goes on into producing the shows at Ford Theater. Today, we welcome Peter Flynn and Sima Sueco. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Peter is an associate professor of musical theater at Montclair State University, as well as a New York-based award-winning director. Peter is the founding artistic director of Plays in the House, an award-winning play reading series raising money for the Actors Fund and NAACP-LDF, which was featured on CBS Sunday Morning. Peter's New York credits include, among others, the off-Broadway premiere of Smart Blonde by Willie Holtzman, Curvy Widow at the West Side Theater, Chess with Josh Groban and Julie Murney, and Funny Girl with Whoopi Goldberg, Jane Krakowski, and Sutton Foster. Peter has also created original musicals for young people with Theater Works USA, which have toured nationally for the past 17 years. Other credits include Sweeney Todd for Connecticut Rep, starring Terrence Mann, Into the Woods, 1776, and Ragtime for Ford Theater, Born Yesterday for the Maltz Jupiter Theater, and many, many more. Peter is the board president of Live and in Color, a not-for-profit theater organization dedicated to the development of plays and musicals by and for BIPOC artists. He's also an associate artist at Ford Theater in Washington, D.C., and an artistic ambassador for the Christchurch International Musical Theater Summer School in New Zealand. Sima Sueco is a director of stage, film, a consensus organizing and R&D projects and productions for theaters, think tanks, and greater good. For Sima, conversations about the arts, politics, and community wove through her upbringing, stitching the tapestry of her core belief that theater is transformative and can contribute to building successful communities when we intentionally activate this art form for the public benefit. Sima's current directing projects include Shakespeare in the Clark Park's Vernon Park play, utilizing Shakespeare Pericles as a starting point to create an experimental interactive artistic piece that connects and nourishes the soul of the community of Germantown in Philadelphia. Directing in Rep, also at Virginia Stage Companies, Dear Jack, Dear Louise by Ken Ludwig, and Hold These Truth by Jeannie Sakata. The new musical in development, Land of Smiles by Erin Kamler, produced by Franklin Theater Group. Sima previously served as the Deputy Artistic Director of Arena Stage, where she directed the film Veterans Day 2020 in partnership with the Atlantic Council think tank, the world premiere of Sharon Rothstein, Right to Be Forgotten, and revivals of The Heiress and The Price. She also directed Lydia Diamond's Smart People and spearheaded the Power Play Summit. Welcome to you both. I do want to tell the members and all viewers, we are taking your questions on our social media platform. Please feel free to submit those so that we may share your questions with our guests during the program. Peter, Sima, hello.
Hi, it's so great to see you.
Good to see you, Jose.
It's great to see you. I'm going to jump right in. I do want to say that, again, you both are directors, well-known directors with incredible bodies of work, and you share something very specific regarding Forts. Sima, your production of Silent Sky was the last production that actually performed at our stage. And Peter, you rehearsed Guys and Dolls all the way to a dress rehearsal, which took place on March 14th. So officially, Guys and Dolls did not open. The first question is, what's the last year been for the both of you? How have you kept busy and in the craft, so to speak? And I also want to know what projects you have been working on. So Peter, let's start with you.
Thanks. It's great to be here. As you mentioned in your great introduction of me, thank you. Very quickly, right after, we did an invited dress rehearsal of Guys and Dolls, and then the theater got shut down, and so I spent some time mourning that we never got to see that community do that show. And then about 2 weeks later, Seth Rudetsky and James Wesley, who were doing something called Stars in the House, which was sort of a variety talk show to raise money for the Actors Fund, called me and said, we're getting requests for more material, and we thought, doing a play every once in a while would be great. And so they asked me to start curating plays and casts to read as staged readings on a platform that was StreamYard. And so every Wednesday matinee and every Saturday matinee, we had a different play reading. And some of it was plays that had been on Broadway with their original cast. In fact, our very first play reading was the original company of the Heidi Chronicles, with Joan Allen and Peter Friedman. And it was an extraordinary experience to see them all come back, Cynthia Nixon. And then others were finding plays that we thought were relevant or entertaining and then casting them ourselves and just having everybody read them. And so I did that for probably the first 8 months of our quarantine. And people could tune in for free, and then they'd get a website to donate to the Actors Fund. And then during the summer, last summer, we switched our programming to support the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I switched my programming as well to have BIPOC writers and directors and actors be a part of the conversation, and then we did that through to the fall. So that was sort of my mainstay, and I was really happy to have it because it was doing something that we all like doing, but from the safety of my home, and it reconnected me with a lot of friends that I usually work with. So that was mostly what I did, and it was really, really fulfilling. I was very grateful for the opportunity.
Can you hear me? How about you?
Yes, thanks so much, Jose. This last year has been so transformational for me. About 8 months into the pandemic, or maybe less than that, I started doing a lot of values clarification, and that's where I really came to the conclusion that I so 100% believe in our art form, and that it can contribute to building successful communities and healthy communities, but that for myself, I needed to be more intentional about doing that. So I made a choice to leave my position as Deputy Artistic Director at Arena Stage and to try to activate my work in a different way. So that was a huge, huge change for me. I left that position in December, and I still consult for Arena Stage, and one of the projects I do for them is the Theater Artist Marketplace, which we initiated last June. We recognize that artists still exist and they're still creative, and audience still exists and they're hungry for the arts, and that the only thing that was broken was the delivery system. So the Theater Artist Marketplace was a new delivery system where anybody in the public can go online and purchase a work of art or commission a work of art from an artist or artisan who's graced Arena Stages, and could this would be all without any in-person contact, and safely, and most of the things were virtual or mailed to the individuals. So I still consult for Arena Stage on that. And then it's just been, such an interesting action to put out into the universe that I want to try to activate my art form for a greater good, and to sort of see what projects cross my desk. So I just came back from Norfolk, Virginia, where I spent the last 10 days directing a reading for Virginia Stage Company on a battleship on the USS Wisconsin. And it was a reading of Dear Jack, Dear Louise, which is a World War II story. And I'll return in the fall to Virginia Stage to direct that show in rep with Hold These Truths, another World War II story. But that one's about a Japanese American, Gordon Hirabayashi, who intentionally defied the incarceration order of Japanese Americans during World War II. And so putting those two shows together intentionally widens the lens of the American experience, and really emphasizes how multifaceted our experiences are. Both stories are initiated in 1942. So projects like that I'm excited about. And then I'm doing this other project in Philadelphia that you referenced in my bio, which is about connecting and nourishing the soul of the community of Germantown in Philadelphia by using Pericles and consensus organizing and creating what I'm calling an artistic thingy that will take place in the park in Vernon Park outside in August, last week of August. So it's been an interesting and transformational journey this last year.
Seema, you also became a filmmaker. You see, this town is very little. We hear things. And tell us a little about that, because that's amazing.
Well, gosh, you make it sound a little more grandiose than it is. I think almost every theater artist became some version of a filmmaker during the course of this pandemic, because, with our traditional delivery system being broken, in-person and live delivery system, many of us did find other ways. And so I was very lucky to get to work on this project, Veterans Day 2020. The Atlantic Council, which is a think tank here in Washington, D.C., their Scowcroft Security Center, one of their senior fellows, his name is Stephen Grunman, had previously, like in years past, he had commissioned a playwright to interview veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and write a play. And their intention was to do a live reading of it at the Kennedy Center last Veterans Day. Of course, that was not going to be possible. So they were then looking for a way to be able to still tell this story in the midst of the pandemic. So they reached out to us at Arena Stage, and I said, yes, I absolutely want to do it. And working with Jared Mazzacci at University of Maryland, he's a projection designer who's been using projection design technology, Isadora, and piping it through Zoom to be able to manipulate the Zoom windows, and then piping it back out to Isadora. That allows us to get out of the boxes and create and edit in a different sort of a way while we're all isolated in our homes across geographical divides. So that was a project that I was really lucky to do.
Seema, as you have said, I think all of us, every theater in a way, have kind of embraced the technology. And Peter, I want to tell you that the readings you had early on were inspirational to us, because we didn't know how are we going to do this via the technology. And it was incredible to see that it could be done, and that it could be done well. And I also know that other theater companies such as Arena were beginning to pioneer documentary and hiring local actors to do films. We have done some of this, and we're very proud of it too. It's kept us very busy. Now, all three of us are stage directors, and I want to kind of shift a little because a lot of people think that being a theater director means one thing, but all of us have different styles. I want to talk about your styles of directing, but I also, in particular, want you to tell us what kind of play you are more attracted to and tend to direct most. Seema, let's start with you.
Ooh, that's such an interesting question. I feel like whether it's a play or a musical or a classic or a contemporary piece or something online or film, that what attracts me to it is the answer to the question, why is this necessary today, this play or this piece necessary today? And I credit Sheldon Epps, who is associated with Ford's Theater as well, and was a previous boss of mine at Pasadena Playhouse, he would always ask that question. So that's sort of where I got that from. And only if it feels like it's necessary, relevant, has something to contribute to today, that's what would attract me to the project, regardless of what genre it's in. And I like to be able to work in new genres, new to me genres, I should say, because then I can try to grow as an artist. You asked a little bit about what distinguishes each of our processes. And I think I was trying to, in reflecting on that, there were sort of two things I thought I'd share. One is the methodology of consensus organizing will, in one form or another, permeate my artistic process. And consensus organizing is a type of community organizing that comes from social work. And it's the idea of building communities of mutual self-interest. And sometimes that takes the form of really engaging with communities through dramaturgy and in a way that they are co-creators or co-owners of the project. And sometimes it takes other forms, but that's a methodology that gets sprinkled into my process, as well as doing R&D, research and development, is also another thing that gets me excited. So if there's something I can experiment with, whether it's in my process or with a particular technology or something I'm testing out, that also gets me very excited.
Peter, you are next. Tell us what excites you. What plays kind of work excites you, or you're attracted to?
I'm just thrilled to be part of the conversation with two other directors, because I don't know about you two, but I never get to hear this stuff from other directors. It's so exciting, that it's such a solitary trajectory that we're on as directors, not in the room, right? We build community, like you said, Seema, but as directors, we never get to hear from each other. Why are you doing this piece, or how's it going, or how are you handling it? So it's really thrilling to hear, what you all do in your rooms. I would have to agree with Seema that, the two questions that I ask, really when I'm working at a regional theater, I will always ask the artistic director, why this play and why now? What is germane or relevant to your community about the play, or your aesthetic as a theater, or the organization? Why was this chosen, and how can I help with that exploration? And then the other thing that really turns me on about a play is, I hope that most plays do this, but the really good ones that center around an event that just had to happen now, right? My wife is Jewish, and at Passover, they ask the great question, why is today different than any other day? And if that's in the center of a play, I'm completely turned on. There's just no other time that this could have happened. And so if there's synergy between, well, this play has to happen now because of these reasons, and this plot has to happen now because of the narrative, then that's a happy experience for me. And I love, Seema, the phrase, say it for me again, consensus organizing.
Yeah, consensus organizing. Mm-hmm.
It's so, I've never heard it before, and it's so great because it really is a big part of, I think, what we do, which is facilitate conversation and consent around how we want to build something larger than ourselves, that then hopefully serves a community larger than the community that is building it, right? So, so I would hope that my process is really predicated on how am I facilitating that investigation by a large group of people, both on stage and off, that is then going to give momentum and clarity and innovation to this text that we have chosen or that was handed to us, and how are we finding those salient, pivotal, poignant, exciting moments together, and then how can I help clarify them to go onto stage?
Great.
Yeah. Jose, what about you?
Oh, I think you're muted, Jose.
I've had an evolution over my career in terms of the kind of work that attracts me most. I think at first, because I came from Puerto Rico and I was in this kind of race to prove myself, I tried to do as many styles and as many possible stories so that people didn't say, well, he can only do this kind of play. But I have to tell you that on the last 10 or so years, what has been very incredible to me is that I only do work that I believe in and that touches me deeply. Those are the kind of works that I all of a sudden feel like I want to explore more. So it does happen that the last several times I have been, lucky enough to direct has been pieces by typically new playwrights, voices that are new to the American theater, and they have energized me because these are stories that I was not aware of. Whether it's, the brother size, or whether it's just a number of plays by women or young playwrights, they have this energy and this need to be heard. Those plays I want to be part of. I want to be a story, be able to facilitate the storytelling on stage. So right now, those are my big passions. I am going to shift very quickly to, of course, working at Ford Theater. I want to know, Peter, first, how did you experience Ford Theater? Were you an audience member ever, or were you just coming to work for us? How did you experience Ford's for the first time?
Sure. I experienced Ford's first a very long time ago on a school trip. I grew up on the East Coast, and I think it was a sort of a standard trip that you went to go see Washington, D.C., and part of that was seeing Ford Theater. And so this is now decades ago. And so we got the tour, and of course it was really stimulating and exciting to see the actual place where all those events took place. And then I experienced it more recently when I was asked back, it was a while ago now, a few years ago. Mark Ramont actually reached out to me to help put together the, I think it was the bicentennial of Lincoln's birthday, which corresponded with the reopening of the theater after the renovation, and to help put together that big night of actors and performers and musicians that celebrated that evening. And so that's when I found Ford's again, and happily so. Everybody was just super collaborative and hospitable and excited about what we were doing. And that's rare anyway, I think, that you find an entire team, both production and design and cast, that everybody's committed to do what we're doing with such relish, but especially on something like a one-off, like where sort of like it's a bunch of people one after the other, and everybody was just so invested in making sure that the evening was successful. I thought, this is a different place, and I started working more from there.
How about you, Seema?
I first experienced Ford's as an audience member as well when I moved to the DC area in 2016. I think I saw my first show was A Christmas Carol, one of the carols there, and there is something very magical when you walk into the building and you really consider the history of the space. And then I was so thrilled when you reached out to me about Silent Sky. That entire process. The team was just a dream come true. So thank you very much, Jose, for that opportunity.
Well, Peter has directed with us so much, and we're always in the lookout for people that we really believe are going to get Ford Theater and what it means, which is kind of part of my next question. Directing in a historic site. I mean, there are, again, great opportunities and challenges when that happens, because we have to be respectful of the site. It's just when you are a director at Ford's, you're dealing with a recreated historic space, a raked stage, high proscenium, and of course, that presidential box. And yet, the two of you embrace those aspects of the space and makes them almost, you use it to highlight the story or vice versa, because that box is always there. So Peter, let's start with you. What are the challenges and the opportunities of directing at a place like Ford's?
I think you just named them all.
Oh,
high proscenium, that box, and what we call the diamond of truth. There's a diamond in the middle of the stage of sort of like, put it there if you want everybody to see it, because of the way the house is shaped. There are some partial view seats and there are some fully view seats. And so, my designers and myself and our choreographer and our cast are always working on, what can be in here and what can we do just on the side of it and what supports it from the outside. Definitely visual storytelling is a perpetual challenge. And without any sentiment, I mean, in a really good way. I think it's really fun to think about how we're going to tell the story visually and make sure that it's visible to as many people as possible. And as far as directing at Ford's, knowing that President Lincoln was a theater enthusiast means a lot to me. To know that he was there, albeit for his final moments, because he wanted to be there. It wasn't a mandatory thing. He actually was enjoying his time there, and why he went to the theater for relief or for meditation or for new information. All of that really, as specifically as I can say, speaks to me, going back to what Seema said of why are we doing this play and why now? I add to that, why at Ford? What about putting it on the Ford stage makes it resonate even more? And usually that's a subtle thing. Usually that's a conversation that I'll have with our creative team and or as a cast, just to sort of know that we're engendering that sort of appreciation and fascination that I've been led to believe President Lincoln had. But I will say there was one moment in my very first book musical for you guys in 1776. We had staged a scene between John Adams and Ben Franklin. It was in the second act when the question of the slavery clause being stricken out of the Declaration of Independence before it got signed. And in the room, Adams was on stage left of Franklin saying, Franklin, if we strike it from the Declaration of Independence, 100 years from now, they'll be blaming us for not taking care of this problem. And we got into the space, and the actor who was playing John Adams, Brooks Ashmanskas, realized the box was behind him, and he shifted his blocking so that he was actually speaking to Franklin and being able to gesture to the box very subtly to say, 100 years from now, people are going to blame us for not solving this for them. And it just was that moment of history truly in the making. And all of us talked about it that day at rehearsal. That's exactly what needed to happen. And it was very special, to have something that tangible to connect the play to the space.
I have to tell you, Peter, I did not see that production. However, I did see the production of Ragtime. And because of when that production happened, it was after the election of 2016. It was a visceral experience that I will never forget. And it was made double visceral because we were in that space. There's no doubt in my mind that having, Ford's be the background of this particular story was very powerful to me. Yeah. And Seema, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, Seema, I just want to say that you did Lauren Gunderson's Silent Sky, and there was a piece in that play at the end where she almost like looks fast forward into the future and what happens and how we have advanced and not. And the first time that we ran that scene during tech, I literally had to leave the theater crying because, once again, the powerful space made these words resonate and talk about the reason why we needed to do Henrietta Leavitt's story. It was just in that particular moment. But Seema, tell us about the challenges and opportunities for you now that you have directed at Ford's.
Well, I echo everything Peter said. And maybe I'll just add that what makes it joyful is being able to surround myself with people far smarter than me, like you, Jose. Having you there and you know the space, being able to give me some tips was extremely helpful. Having a really good voice and dialect coach, Lisa Nathans was working with us, to be able to help the actors ground themselves, but also, their voices hit that upper balcony. And they were, given the architecture of the space, different pockets where some sounds resonate really well and some don't. But all of that expertise between yourself, the collaborators that we brought on for the project, Kristen Fox, all of you make going into any sort of a challenge such a wonderful and joyful opportunity for an artist. So again, I thank you for making that possible.
Well,
Truly,
oh my
you're
God.
here. I would say the same thing, and I would add on to what Seema said. First of all, thank you truly when you all are around, because Ford's is the home of compassionate candor. It really is where, Jose, you'll come in and your perspective on either the space or what we're doing or the through line or the questions you're asking or what Kristen sees, really, it really is a place of development and conversation during process, right? And you all just offer it from such a place of conversation. And like I said, candor that is supported by compassion. I know what you're going through and here's what I'm seeing. And it's just sterling that occurs there.
I want to also add the company management is incredible. Those snacks that they bring into tech. Oh my goodness. I went back to Arena Stage and raved about it. And so, yes, it's the best tech snack cart this side of the Mississippi, or perhaps in the nation, I think.
Well,
I'd agree.
That is just so funny. Thank you. It's appreciated, and we make sure that those snacks are back when we return. I do want to ask you one more thing before we go, and it's like instead of Back to the Future, Back to the Past. If you were directing a show at Ford Theater back in 1865, what would you take there from today, Seema?
I take today's audience.
Peter?
Then Seema, you and I should go back together, because I would take today's actors.
Excellent. Yes. That's great.
Totally.
Listen, you both, this has been a pleasure. This has been a very difficult year, and one of the things that has made it very tough for us is the fact that we haven't hugged people like you, talked to people like you. It's just, we are in such deficit, and I cannot wait until we return. I do want to tell our audience here that we are very hopeful. We will be returning in the fall. Keep your ears and eyes out for our season announcement. Again, thank you, Seema and Peter, for today's conversation. We hope that you at home enjoyed our conversation. We will continue to respond to your Facebook and Twitter comments and questions that we didn't get during our live session today. Please consider making a financial gift to Ford Theater to support our mission and work. You may do so at fords.org/donate. We hope you'll join us here again for our next Cabinet Conversation on June 17th, when we'll connect with Dennis and Judy Shepard, the parents of Matthew Shepard. Until then, please stay safe and well. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.